Hello, and welcome to the video version of the Left of Greg podcast. I'm Brian Marin, the host and creator of the show. As always, I will be joined by human behavior expert Mr. Greg Williams, who the show is affectionately named after. On the show, we discuss different topics through the lenses of what we call human behavior pattern recognition and analysis. If you'd like to find out more about what that is, please check the links in the episode details and go to our website to learn more. Please don't forget to follow us on social media. The links are also in the episode details, and hit the like and subscribe button to help support our work. Thanks for tuning in, and we hope you enjoy the show. Well, good morning, Greg. How are you today?
Good morning. Good morning, Brian, and almost Merry Christmas, huh?
Yeah, we're getting close. And this one's coming out right away, so it's getting close up on to the holidays, which is always interesting and exciting, and also, unfortunately, a lot of bad things happen around the holidays too.
Yep.
Especially, I think, because of this ongoing effects of COVID psychologically and physically on a lot of people. It's a little heavier on people's minds than they've realized, and people are obviously, the stress factors are continuing to show. People are continuing to get upset over it, which is understandable, which is why you have an increase in all kinds of different, car accidents, alcohol involved incidents, domestic violence, all that stuff over this past year, which unfortunately is a side effect of all of this that kind of I get it. You get an update in the news every single day on what variant and where it's at and all this other stuff, but we don't focus on the things that we can control. But
that's not accidental. So let me just throw a caveat to that. If you're listening right now, Brian and I completely understand it. 42 million Americans feel the effects of increased anxiety and even more so during the holidays. And now even more so because of the exacerbations from COVID and the other things. My idea, folks, is that increased anxiety works on your psychological emotions. Talk it out, don't act it out. We're here if you want to talk to us and your neighbors or anybody else, but don't just sit on it, because it ain't going to get easier.
Yeah, and which is why we see, kind of as a good segue into the topic we're discussing today, which is, about kind of crowds and crowd behavior. And we've had several people, kind of reach out and ask us to kind of cover this topic. And
Sure.
we've definitely covered it before in general in several other episodes, including, last summer when there was all the riots all over, and, kind of talked about how things escalate, how they spin out of control. You can go back and listen to those. We did a couple great ones on that, but, didn't get too specific into crowd behavior. So to kind of start the conversation, I know I always describe it as, and I'm sure you would agree or disagree, you can tell me now, but, individually, most humans can be reasoned with, spoken to, even when angry, upset, even sometimes emotionally disturbed people, even with drugs on board. I mean, you talk about your experience even as a hostage negotiator, you're in high stressful situations. One-on-one, individually, most people can be reasoned with at some level, maybe not to the level you want, but you can kind of get them to kind of go along a little bit easier. Once we start to increase the numbers of people that were the size of the group from 2 to 4 to 10, now 100, whatever that is, I always say, like, we get dumb real fast, right? We kind of turn off that prefrontal cortex and our critical thinking a little bit, because there's safety in numbers in general, right? So maybe we're gonna, we'll engage in behavior we otherwise typically wouldn't alone, right? There's a crowd there, so maybe sometimes we'll need to feel like we need to be part of it or show off or be the leader. Like, there's a lot of different dynamics, and people study crowd dynamics and crowd behavior and mob action and mob behavior and crowd psychology. There's a lot of study and research behind it. And, a lot of it gets into different theoretical concepts of how people think in those situations. And we focus on how people behave in those situations. Precisely. Right? Because, and it's not bashing any of this research into it. It's just that it's descriptive analytics of this is how people maybe think. But you got to remember too, there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in human beings, right? We think and say maybe one thing, and then we do another thing, right? So you can't rely too much on what people's motivations are for doing stuff. So that's why we keep it general, right? When the larger that crowd gets, really the dumber we get. We really kind of turn off our brains a little bit, and we go along with things, right?
So let's talk about that, because that's a great comment. I hate to interject on your preamble, but you just brought up something I think is really important. So folks, Brian and I and our team, we were training GSG-9, the Hungarian Special Forces, the Hellenic Navy SEALs, a whole bunch of this group together. And the sidebar got off on soccer hooligans. And you remember we were interviewing them on how do soccer hooligans go. And the greatest comment that I ever heard is the guy said, look, when we become soccer hooligans, a crowd is not us. It's not us individually. It's us, the crowd. And we got onto that tangent. Now, you just said it again. So I'll put it in terms of this. If you think about it, as the group gets larger, we get dumber. So put it like this. Everybody knows of a show like Jeopardy. You know, there's a million of them out there, but Jeopardy is kind of like the Fleming original to the Trebek to now who the hell ever it is. If we were to go against the three people on Jeopardy and we were individually and they were allowed to compete against us, okay, they would have a technical and a tactical advantage. Now, if we said there's going to be 6 of them, Brian, against us, okay, wow, I'm going to have to be on my best game, because even with the clicker timing and everything else, they're going to have the advantage. Now, what happens if all of a sudden they give me 3 or 6 to bolster my side?
Right.
Now we create almost a competition. So what I just showed there in just a model simulation is that let's put yourself in the situation of a crowd on the street, and now all of a sudden an opposing viewpoint, or they find a central viewpoint that they're all for, and now you're an individual copper, or you say, hey, send me a couple extra, and now the crowd, you know, the fucking police cars show up, pardon my language, and you get what I'm trying to say. The tumult forms. What people don't understand is anytime that you have turbidity, I want you to think of this. If you're a copper and you're listening right now, what happens? What's a fatal funnel? Going in or out of a door for a military or a first responder? What about for a plumber? The water going into a drain. Generally, the water that's setting out here isn't your problem, okay? As it comes towards that drain, Brian, it becomes much more turbid and violent, and it's spinning around, and it's unpredictable sometimes, and different things will happen. So when odds are one-on-one, you're exactly right. I'm much more likely to be able to talk reason with you, and talk you down, and the de-escalation process, as long as both players are starting near the same goal. You see what I'm trying to say?
Right.
Because
you have to,
I don't want anybody thinking, look, if a person spun out of control and they're putting, you know, heads on spikes and lighting cars and everything, you can't come in and go, okay,
hey, let's talk this
like
out.
You're upset. Yeah, you can't do that. Okay. No. A sociologist somewhere is arguing with this in Portland, going, of course you can.
Yeah, I don't think so.
While you're reading your book from the glow of the fire of outside while they're, you know, burning you in effigy. But I just want to say that, Brian, you're exactly right in making those distinctions. And I want people to know a crowd's not a mob and a mob is not a riot. As much as I say a crowd is not us, the characterization of a crowd, for example, at a mall, or a crowd like crowded, the word itself takes on a bad connotation. Why aren't you going into the movie theater, Brent? Oh, it's crowded. Why weren't you going to go to that street vendor?
It's too crowded.
Oh, it's too crowded. So you see, even in the word, there's the insinuation that this might be a place we don't want to find ourselves close to that drain. You get the correlation I'm trying to make?
Yeah, and you know, the other kind of general important thing to remember in that is that, you know, those crowd situations, when you have a large gathering of people, they have the ability to escalate much quicker, right? Because you know, so like you just said, with all those numbers, now we've got a bunch of like-minded individuals, and you know, let's use I know we use the airport as an example for a number of things, and I like that. You know, you're sitting there waiting for your flight, and you know, you see someone arguing with the gate agent. You know, it's pretty easy to be like, man, this person's kind of, you know, they're a little out of line here. They shouldn't be yelling at it. But if, you know, 10 minutes before that, you know, the gate agent came on and said, oh, you know what, hey, we're going to be delayed an hour, this is going on, and you've got a connecting flight, now you're amped up, then you see the person go up there and start to speak their mind. Well, suddenly you're a little bit more on that person's side. Suddenly you feel their pain a little bit more. Sometimes literally, you know, you feel that they're upset, so you're a little bit more likely to relate to that. Whereas just change the circumstances a little bit, you would have gone, this person's kind of an asshole. But now you're going like, well, you know, yeah, he's yelling a lot, but I get it, man. I see what he's saying. Suddenly,
so let me throw this at you.
The wind blows a little bit, and suddenly you're on the other side.
So, folks, if you're listening, what Brian just did is he did sociological argument number 7. B, which he said that the environment dictates the behavior, which is exactly true. And he gave you concrete examples of being in that situation and watching it. So now let me take it from a different perspective, Brian. Let me go to 7C, which is context. Context can be everything in a situation like that. So folks, when you walk into any situation with your family, alone, at work, anything else, I would start talking about obstacles, dangers, and opportunities. They're all the same. They're going to manifest themselves in the environment, right? So what Brian is saying is the environment can trigger that. I'm saying that context can trigger that. So put yourself in the food court of that same airport, and two people at a table are having an argument. One, you're likely never to notice it, okay? Or if you're sitting close enough to notice it, you'll probably grab your food and move away, because you, in the greater scheme of maneuver, it doesn't offer you an obstacle to you getting on your flight. It's certainly not going to give you a danger, because it's just a verbal argument, so you're not going to have to step in. And as far as an opportunity, unless one of the players is really good looking, and you want to be a Rico Suave and slide in and go, "Hey, baby, he's treating you wrong," which in the environmentals that you discussed, that's not going to happen. Now let's put it to the gate agent. So we're going to go 3. The gate agent. Now you hear the person arguing. Well, is this going to be an obstacle to me getting on a plane? If it is, I'm probably going to stand up and tell the guy, "Hey, back off, take a seat."
Right.
Okay, you get it?
Yep.
Now, is there going to be a danger? Is the guy threatening and doing the behaviors? I'm going to go up and go, "Hey, you need to chill out, Bugsby. You're starting to scare all of us." And then the opportunity, is this an opportunity to go up after that guy leaves and go, "Hey, on that first class cabin, you see how slimy humans are?" Okay, now let's change it to one more place. Let's put it at 35,000 feet, Brian. Problems will get easier at 30,000 feet. Now that guy stands up, and now he's not only an obstacle to my continued flight, because I don't want an emergency landing. He's an obstacle to my safety. You get what I'm trying to say? And I'm not going to do that. He now has elevated to a danger, or she, of course, change those among need. And what's my opportunity now? My opportunity may be that if I don't step in now, I won't have the chance later, and we'll be landing in Boise effing Idaho, and I'm not going to make Christmas. You see? So I would tell you that it's the human behavior that matters, and the group dynamic in a human behavior, the threshold lessons. Why? Because of those 3 things. People are looking at obstacles to them, not obstacles to the group. They're looking at dangers proposed, by the situation. And then finally, if I don't have an opportunity to make this a good thing, it's going to screw up my day, and I'm not going to take that. So now let's add let's go back to the ground and add like something stupid, like weather. Do people react the exact same way in hot weather as they do in cold weather? Now, for 20 years, I've been going to the tree lighting ceremony in Gunnison, and it's always below 0. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And there's a couple of thousand people out there. What does that bring together? It brings out the best in people.
Yeah.
You never see somebody go, "Oh, your dog's near my foot. Hey, look, watch out." They're like, "Hey, I got an extra pair of gloves. How are you? Hey, we're having hot chocolate. What are you guys drinking?"
Right.
Now put that it's 106 wet ball, Brian. You get what I'm trying to say? And the sun's beating down. What happens to every music event, every concert, everything? Now people are, "What? Why are you looking at me?" And they're ready to go. So if you take environment and context, do you see what I'm trying to say? And you observe it through those lenses, we're back at that drain. The closer to the drain, the more likely you're going to get sucked down and in. And so, you have to determine when that point is nigh, because if you don't, then you're going to be in the fatal funnel. I'm still trying to make a correlation.
No.
Your point is coming.
And what you're talking about is as the dynamics in a crowd change, and you can sense that atmospheric shift or that change in what's going on, that is this situation escalating or de-escalating. That's what I mean. It can be volatile, right? It can start to escalate very rapidly, but all of those things have to build. Like you just said, you gave the perfect example. If you pull the plug on the drain in the bathtub, first it starts going on, and then it starts even going in there a little bit slowly, and then what starts to happen, the water starts to spin around, and then it picks up speed as it's going. So that's exactly what we're talking about.
Sometimes you can't escape that.
Right. So if you pull, that plug gets pulled, or that stopgap gets pulled, you hit that critical mass, it breaks the valve, whatever the situation is, right? Then all of a sudden this goes from people hanging out and partying on a Friday, and there's some of my buddies, and let's go over here. Oh, I heard so-and-so's coming. Yeah, call them out here. Next thing you know, it's 200 people out on the street in downtown Chicago.
Now what are you going to do?
And we're pulling bus drivers out and beating them up. And you're going, well, wait a minute. what happened in here? How did it get from point A to point Z, and how did it escalate so quickly?
Yep.
And this is what we're talking about. And it comes down to group and individual behavior. Now, so I made the point, and you somewhat agree, that we get kind of dumb in those circumstances. And you forget where you're at. You get caught up in the moment. You're just there to have fun. But then the next thing you know, there's a fight going on over here. You know what I'm saying? Like, those things can start to spiral and get out of control very quickly. And
your role as a spectator, are you now a demonstrator? Are you now a participant?
Right.
You see what I'm trying to say? So that fine line, Brian, that fine, it's so fine that it's like anger and rage. When a person says, okay, well, can you tell me the difference between anger and rage? Yes. Can you tell me the exact point that it occurs? Man, probably chemically, but I can show you the window where it's most likely to occur, right?
Yeah, I don't have a tool to measure the specific nanosecond on which it flipped from one to the next, but it's a gradient. Once you hit this point, it's about to hit. Okay, now it clearly has. Like
so it's spectator and participant, right?
I agree. And this comes down to a lot of study is put into how humans behave during these scenarios, right?
Right.
And, there's different observer effect, bystander effect of different, studies, especially sociological studies people have done, and psychological ones for crowd psychology. And there's kind of, it often, I don't think it gets described very clearly, right? And that goes to the like we talked about before, the Genovese lady in New York, Genovese, and how she was brutally murdered and no one did anything to help. Well, that was a story. That's not exactly what happened, right? But it was. People heard something.
Not for a white paper.
Well,
this is how sociology works, right? People wrote about it.
People heard something, saw something. People looked out their windows, yelled at this guy. He took off, and she was, bleeding basically out, underneath, but they couldn't see her. And then the way and everyone did the whole, how can 36 people hear and see this and do nothing? Well, part of that effect is, if what'll happen is if there's something happens in a crowd, let's say someone gets hurt and someone immediately turns and goes to help them, the surrounding people will also do the same thing. Like, they will turn around and start helping that individual. If no one does anything, we sociologically kind of look around at our surroundings and go, wait a minute, what's going on here? Did you help? Was I supposed to, or did someone already do that?
So what Brian just described perfectly is how your mirror neurons create social contagion.
Yes.
So social contagion is simply this: if everybody's doing something, you will. If nobody's doing anything, you won't. Mm-hmm. And that's literally that simple. And we're trying to convolute it into, force it into this, again, the Plato shapeshifter and stuff. Exactly. It's just that easy. Listen, if I see you pick up and throw a rock and break a window and there's no consequences for it, I'm a rock throwing son of a bitch. By the same token, if somebody is screaming and somebody says, we should help that lady, let's help. Everybody around you will help and grab their torches and light them on fire and go and kill Frankenstein. It's just that simple. So what's the opposite of social contagion? Anonymity. If you're so anonymous from the crowd, you're not going to participate or be a spectator. You're going to be left alone. So when people tell you, well, I feel an anonymity in a greater crowd, no, they're saying it wrong. What they're saying is the mirror neurons of the crowd are so strong that they'll carry you with the wave, just like we were talking about the drain, right? Or they'll repel you. They'll push you away from it.
Right.
And so how have cops historically answered crowds? By bringing in groups of people with shields and bats dressed all in black from head to toe and throwing smoke and trying to herd you. Well, I want you to conduct a limited objective experiment by getting weasels or cats or dogs and poking them to the point of frenzy and then trying to get them from a suitcase to another suitcase. It's not going to work, Brian.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And now, what did we just talk about? You exacerbate that with the weather, okay? Or with the increased anxiety of, I don't have a clear exit. Kitty Genovese would be alive today if that same situation occurred in an elevator, because the context changes because of the environmental change. And we now see that it's incumbent upon us to act or somebody's going to die. It's a different scenario.
If there had been one person in that lobby or whatever, so it would have been completely, that everyone who heard it would have helped or done something or called, you're exactly right. And there's, it's kind of what, when you talk about that anonymity and getting pushed out in there, that can happen, and people kind of, can get either drawn in or pushed away from the crowd. And it's kind of, there's different kind of schools of thought on it. And, a lot of people say, well, you're more likely to do something in a crowd that you otherwise wouldn't do alone as an individual, which is true.
That's true. But why?
To a certain point.
Right. So to use your own point environmentally, when I go to Vegas, I'm a totally different human being.
Right.
When I see that slot machine, do you get what I'm trying to say? And folks, I don't drink. Brian will attest to the fact that I'm a teetotaler until I meet Brian. Okay. At which point all bets are off. And what is it? The tacos at the street vendor in Mexico City under a
2:30 in the morning.
Yeah. Okay. But the idea, Brian, is that nature nurture. I'm not going to go deep into it.
Yeah.
But depending on certain environmentals, yes, you will be drawn to do what you don't do. And Bible and the Quran and Talmud call those sins. Do you see what I'm trying to say? Because given a certain situation, all of us sin. None of us is without sin. So I would say, yeah, but I'm not buying the fact that for example, have you ever seen the wave at a sporting event? Okay. Not everybody takes part in the wave.
No.
So there's some people that will be lured into it and playfully have a good time. And there's some people that'll go, nah, kind of not me. That's crowd dynamics. You're never sure where that crowd. That's why, remember when we did the crowd modeling at the infantry immersive trainer for the simulation industry, and we tried to explain to those guys
more recently. Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, but what we tried to explain is that there were outliers and there were people that were going to be spectators, and then we had people that were going to try to escape, and that was going to create another environmental an atmospheric shift in the environment. And how do we correlate the responsibilities? And remember, every time we tried to build a model of that, Brian, a statistical model to example that, there's always the what factor. There's always the human factor where the person doesn't run or the person stops to take the photo, and that changes the behavior. You see what I'm saying? There's so many little molecules.
It's a finite data set, the number of things you're going to potentially do, but you do have a lot of options in there. And this is where people get into like free will and what you chose to do, but which I always say we have a lot less free will than we think we do.
Totally agree.
We're a little bit more driven by a whole bunch of unconscious things that we're not really tuned into. But that gets into what a lot of the study is done on this, and which is why we just take a different approach, right? So all the studies done on how people think during these different situations, especially crowd situations, and what their motivations are during those, and how that. And that's great for sitting around the fireplace and talking about it, but it's not great for establishing intent. And because there's a lot of people that do believe, people say, well, you're going to do stuff. And I got caught up in the crowd. And next thing you know, I was walking out with a TV and stealing a watch out of a car dealership on Rush Street, which just happened downtown Chicago. But and I'm more of the mind, well, there's certain things you're going to do in a crowd that you wouldn't do alone, but maybe that's just who you are, and you now got a chance to do it. So, and I also call that, we were kind of talking about this, is like, it's like the steroid effect, right? So people go, yeah, this guy's on steroids and he's got roid rage, and like, that's kind of not really a thing. Yes, increasing your testosterone levels will increase your aggression levels and all that, but it just amplifies who you are as a person, right?
Like cocaine, right?
Cocaine amplifies who you are as a person. Like, if you're an asshole, you're going to be a really big ass.
Yes,
huge
it's not going to make you a nice person at the party. No, don't try that.
But it's not going to turn you into an asshole if you're a nice person. And it goes down to that crowd stuff. Like, no, what was your intent? What were you there for? You saw an opportunity. It means that crossed your mind if you're in one of those department stores, and that 100 people walk in and start stealing stuff, typical reaction, one, you should be scared and worried and worried for your safety and trying to get out of there. But if you're not, and you go, well, you know what, I might as well just grab these jeans that I had anyway and take off without them, because that's part of who you are.
That's who you are.
That's who you are.
So look, if somebody is still messed up, and they're thinking about, okay, so how come Seattle and Oakland and Portland and the protracted riots for so long? Think of it, folks. And if you're a copper, write this down. It's the perfect storm of anxiety and emotion coming together with anonymity. What do I mean by that? All of a sudden you had COVID that forced us to wear face masks. Face masks are so abnormal to us as humans because we don't want to see, we want to see your eyes and your face. That's how we learn to get oxytocin and love things and hate other things. So all of a sudden you had a situation where now these folks were legally in a group carrying a bat, wearing a face mask, right? So it made it easier to fall off that ledge. Okay. Yeah. So what happened, Brian, is the ledge was always there.
It was always there.
Okay. Yep. So your distance to the ledge changed. And you know, Nietzsche, when we look into the abyss looks into us. What happened is the power of drawing you in could be less because the consequences were less. And I looked at you and I said, we're here to light a fucking, pardon me again, a police car on fire. The anger makes me get out my anger speech.
Yeah.
And we're here to fight with the cops, and we're here to do these things. And guess what we've got? We've now got the context of being allowed to wear face masks, which gives us a greater degree of anonymity. So, Brian, that perfect storm is coming towards that drain, and it's going to be turbulent around there. There's going to be a tremendous amount of draw, and physics takes over just as much as psychology. And now you add the physiology of it being hot near a fire and people are screaming and there's the smell of chemical aerosol spray in there. Come on, man. I mean, that's it. You're either on the way to a fight or a Roman orgy. You know, where are you? Do you hear a fiddle playing? I mean, you see what I'm saying? And so don't get swept away in that and then come back and go, man, hey, that got out of hand quick. You know what I'm trying to say?
Killed the guy.
He killed the guy. I had a trident. But the idea there, Brian, is that a copper, like if you're a shift commander, this is the kind of mental calculus you should be playing. Hey, we've got that movie that's playing tonight, and it's that very violent whatever. And hey, I wonder if we should increase the number of patrols around the theaters. All right, I wonder if we should do. You have to be ready for that, because if you're not ready for it, what's like weather is an easy thing to predict. Hey, it's going to be really hot. We're going to have a homicide. Good. Okay. Now, but remember, we have that open air concert in the park. Okay.
Yeah.
What kind of music it is? Oh, it's symphony. Okay. Now you see the going down right in my graduated cylinder. Oh, it's the Juggalos. Oh, it's the Insane Clown Posse. You see what I'm trying to say? Yeah. I'm not trying to cast aspersions. I'm saying it's not unlike hunting. Hunting has to do with things like you don't just go hunt deer anytime during the year or elk. You wait till the estrus cycle where the pheromones and everything is kicking, and now they have a need to breed. Why? Because animals get stupid. So now you got animals getting stupid. Then you don't hunt deer on the street in your village, do you? Okay. You go into the woods to where they've established behavior. So if you were a social scientist, could you figure this out? Yeah, but you don't need to be, Brian. You need to be less of a social scientist and more of a human, and just apply the lens of human behavior. They're making it too tough for us, I think. Like for example, what's the definition of a crowd? I haven't read
there's
hundreds.
Yeah, because it's like more, and then they break down into like collective behavior, but then the collective behavior could be two people working on a table building it. You know what I mean? Like that's not a crowd.
But a riot's defined. Riot's defined in every language, in every culture, in every law. Three or more people acting in concert. Right. Yeah. So what I'm trying to say is, don't try to get that granularity driven where you're trying to explicate every molecular movement of it. Just take a look and go, what's the trend? What's the way they're like an undulating current, a wave? Read it that way, I would say.
No, and that's the kind of the what if game during it. You know what I mean? Like you're those crowds. So whether that's in the airport terminal at the gate and going, well, wait a minute, is this escalating or is this de-escalating? Is the pressure increasing or is it decreasing? What happens to this conversation? What happens to these two people who are already kind of saying comments to each other, waiting for the plane? What happens when we lock ourselves in that tube? Because that aluminum tube and that pressure increases. Because
and now guess what, Brian? We start filming. So what do we say? If you can film it, you can solve it. If you can film it, you can prevent it. Nobody listens to us. But listen, watch that situation that Brian is creating. He's creating a part task training. And all of a sudden I start bringing out and I start filming it. Are people going to be on their best behavior during filming? Sometimes exactly the opposite. Sometimes they're going to put that camera away. I swear to God. And that'll be the tipping point, Gladwell, that pushes us in a certain direction. I'm in complete and violent agreement with your point that I think that what happens is the closer we get to those external factors, sociological, psychological, and certainly social or physiological, I think what happens, Brian, is that anxiety level becomes the trigger. Do you get what I'm trying to say? And now, you said we were rehearsing for something completely different this morning, and you were talking about, hey, let's make it about the issue and about the human. And what you've done is you've reversed the roles. You said here, to make it about the situation, we have to understand the human. And I think that's the best definition. I think we have to understand the human actor given this situation and the pressures on them.
It's the ultimate, it's the ultimate example of establishing intent is the best way to go with. I don't care what the crowd's there for. I don't care what the signs say. I don't care what their t-shirts say. It's what is the crowd doing, right? Did the crowd show up with cardboard and Sharpies and a bottle of water in their pocket, or did they show up with
a
gloves
ladder
on, a helmet on?
A ladder, exactly. I get it.
So I don't care what the message is that they're saying. It's what is their behavior and what is their intent, and then what you can see is what if a rock gets thrown in this pond right now, where are the ripples going to go? Right. Like you just said, and I know it's like, well, the police, we have to show up to these things. It's like, I get it, but what's the outcome? What are we expecting? All right. If all of a sudden I've got this side that's really angry and it's escalating, and I give them a common enemy. Oh man, what is that going to do to that crowd? You know what I mean? If I give them a common enemy to all band really well together and fight, it's just of course it's going to escalate the situation. Right. And just understanding behavior.
How did you build Al-Qaeda? How did you build Taliban? How did you a common enemy? How do we create and foster and foment brotherhood and sisterhood in our classes in person? We create a common, and they don't know us. Listen, and then in the first hour, we've got everybody hooked to our training because we've done it that way. And I would tell you that we have to take a look at the lack of preparation. For example, right now we're still talking about January 6th. And the overthrow of the government. Look, if that was an attempt to overthrow the government, it was the worst one I've ever seen in my entire life. So let's back off of the rhetoric. Would you agree? I will ask this. Would you agree that there was one place over 4 hours, let's say, that's about the right timeline, one place where they were fighting nose to nose for an inch of space to try to get into the building, where another place they gained almost immediate entry and now demonstrated their intent by going, now what do we do?
And
I want to take a picture of it. So what I'm trying to say
that's a really good example. Yeah.
The environment and the amount of pressure and the anxiety. So here we were fighting for every inch of terrain because we lost sight of what was going on. And then if the people would have come in, they would have been much more violent. There would have been much more damage.
Well,
because they were pushed into that decision.
You brought it up, so we might as well talk about it because it's a great example of crowd behavior that we mean by this. So let's take
the same incident.
Let's take out anything we know about an investigation or political leanings or ideologies or who voted for who, because as we did find out, I think half the people there weren't even registered voters. But it goes, which is a perfect point. Like, what is this? What is the intent here? What's going on here? What were all the contributing factors? If you're going to try and tell me that was some highly organized, were there some elements of people that wanted to organize for something? Well, of course there were. Were there just a lot of people that showed up and here's the party and what are we doing? Yep. Yeah, I got nothing to do today. Like anytime I see any of these things happen,
and there was just as many people that said, I smell a fight brewing and I want to be there to throw the first punch.
But what you just brought up was what happened? What was the plan? What was their intent once you got inside there? Oh man, wow, let's go take some photos. Oh, I'm on this desk. Let's grab
bunch of people had guns.
I'm gonna grab souvenirs.
A bunch of people had guns. And if it was an overthrow, there would have been a bunch of gunplay. A bunch of people had incendiary devices. Some people had what could be classified as explosives. My idea is this isn't a general concentrated effort where everybody was of one thought. What happened is that social contagion, the mirror neurons, turned assholes into bigger assholes.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm trying to say? And some people had an agenda, and agenda equals intent. Okay.
Yes.
And they tried to act that out. And then other people were there because they had an increased level of anxiety around the time of elections, which is not untoward. And you can look through every culture around elections. And guess what, Brian? They were put into this melting pot of humanity, and some allow their mirror neurons to get out of control. And they're saying, hey, this one person and this one message is what it was that turned everybody over. Okay, stop.
Yeah,
stop
that's a bit of a, I would say that's a quantum leap of logic there, as you would say.
Worse, Brian. That's the let them eat cake defense.
Well,
that was the only thing that started the French Revolution. Was that callous remark? Why do we do that?
Such junk. It's such junk.
There's so many contributing factors,
No, and that's what it is. You can watch that and literally watch people trying to figure out shit as they go along. Okay, if you're trying to figure things out as you go along, it's because you don't have a plan. Like if you're running around like that, I mean, it's literally like, oh wow, these are not the brightest people in the world. What are you doing? What the fuck is going on here?
And there were some very dangerous people in that crowd with nefarious intent, but they were the ones that we need to target.
But now let's go to now compare that. Let's compare that to what happened the summer previously, of what a protest then turns into a riot and burning of a city. Were there people in there that were just good Americans exercising their First Amendment right? Absolutely, there were.
Absolutely, but it's losing. That's losing its glimmer, its sheen.
And were there some people that said, no, I want to go smash windows? Yeah. And then were there some people that just showed up and decided to jump in on it because they were bored? Yeah. Like this is what the dynamics are in those groups. And they the only at that point, the only collective thought process is we're fucking rioting now. Like, I mean, there's
take
not
it back
much
to 92,
because there's going to be some guy in there going, hey, once they get into that building, I'm going to go steal this because that's what I'm here for. Yeah. And he's just waiting for someone to smash out that window. You get there's so many different dynamics in there.
Listen, Sublime, the group put it so well. When she came out, she was getting some Pampers. Okay. Listen, not everybody is even understanding what it's about. Right. They don't know whether it's social anarchy. They don't know whether an earthquake caused it. And they're just saying, what would be nice? I can't afford the $35 for the Pampers.
Yeah.
I'm going to get them for free. Folks, if we don't take a look at that from the sociological, psychological, and physiological, we'll miss. And what we're going to miss is we're going to be reacting to all the incidents. Reginald Denny getting drug out of the vehicle, and why? Because Reginald Denny was there.
Yep.
Reginald Denny became a totem for the entire thing that was occurring around them. So we have to understand this is a game of people. So if we're going to strategize, if we're going to play a game, we don't play a game with the situation, Brian. We play a game with the people. If we put people in a motel and tell them that they're jailers, you get what I'm saying, or prisoners, it's going to
turn into a prison.
A social experiment is always going to have a limited number of outcomes. That's why we have to look at that ahead of time. So to answer your argument today about crowd behavior, you have to look at human behavior and just protract it out. And the closer you are to the drain, the larger the amount of turbidity and lure to pull you off that edge, where that wouldn't even be in your mind had you been at church that morning or shopping, or do you get what I'm trying to say? Skating with the family at Jorgensen Park. That's what I'm trying to say. And I think that epitomizes what you're saying as well. I'm just saying that we got to stop being so gosh damn clinical about these things, thinking that there's an architecture to modeling a human behavior. And I think you would agree with that, that it depends on so many other factors.
And you can use a framework, but once you increase the input in one area, that's
like a math equation.
It's going to change the effects in other areas.
It's like doing fractals rather than fractions. I'm completely agreeing with you.
You can make general assumptions and general predictions, right? Like, so your point, like very simply, what month of the year is there more likely to be a protest in, June or January? It's June, because it's fucking cold in January.
Us weather. No. So look at this argument, Brian, that for example, what kind of mesmo the Navy pulled to beat Army on Saturday, and look at the fallout there. Well, when we take a look at a sporting event, it's back to that soccer hooligans. Look, when the Wings won the Stanley Cup, they're tipping over cars and they're burning stuff up.
Yeah.
Listen, you have to understand what characterized that. Okay, you had an event. Then you had people around the event. Then you had them in a highly emotional state. Then you had the mirror neuron of the first person ripping down the goalpost or doing that. You see what I'm trying to say? That's where you need to address it. The perfect storm is coming, right?
Because you could describe all of that behavior, and you could ask me, just if you describe that situation happening. Okay, people yelling and screaming in the streets, jumping down on cars, flipping them, setting a fire, and then you go and give me all the details, and then go, Brian, what was the precipitating event? Was it a team winning the Stanley Cup, or was it a high-profile news jury trial? And I go, I'd have no idea. That's what I'm saying.
Yes, it was.
It was. Like it's the same thing.
I totally agree.
So this is why we try to, but this is another argument for why we try to take the ideology out of it, or your, I don't care what the social, religious, cultural, political ideology. That clouds our judgment, that clouds the way we handle things, the way we respond to things, because then you'll have stuff in cities go, well, we got to go stop that protest in the streets, but we can't do that one over there because
we're going to stay out of that.
We're going to stay out of that. It's like, no. Get rid of the ideology behind it. Get rid of the reason why. Get rid of the motivation for it. And what are they doing? What's actually happening? What is the behavior of the crowd? What are the individuals doing in that crowd? You're going to have opportunists that are going to try and just do what they can. You're going to have just straight anarchists who are just burn it all down. I don't care what the system is. I want to burn it down. You're going to have people there that are legitimately concerned about whatever issue they're trying to raise. You're just going to have this so many different types of people in that element, and they'll feed on each other. So what do we want them to eat?
That's why that's so brilliant. What a great remark. Are we feeding the beast, Brian?
Yeah.
Are we feeding the beast? And is it a good diet? Is the food going to be fuel, or is going to, so that was a great comment. Why do we champion Ahmaud Arbery and the case? Because it was done the right way and had the appropriate outcome.
Yes.
Why did we tell people,
even despite the initially someone trying to get rid of it, justice prevailed on several levels.
And so it's a landmark decision. And why do we tell people to back off of Waukesha and not turn it into what it's not? Because it's a person, and it's a human that's just a shitty person, and it was waiting for a situation like this to happen. Why am I talking like this? Because there's a caper that's going on, and I don't want to discuss the finite details of the caper, but imagine a copper's chasing a stolen, and like all people that want to get away, if it's between the copper and you will rev your engine and drive at the copper.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? Whether your intent's to kill him or not, you're going to scare him, and sometimes the guns come out and the shooting starts. So this copper with a stolen car full of teenagers, and I don't care if they were all convicted felons, okay? Right. It was a property crime. The copper pulled out his gun and fired 8 rounds into the car, okay? So now the battle has been raging since this happened, Brian, and he was fired, and then he was charged for homicide, and now he's reinstated, and he's given this. You know what? At the end of the day, folks, this is what I want you to do. Bring out your gosh damn yellow pad. And I want you to write down on the yellow pad, okay, was justice served? Well, let's back it off that dial a little bit and go back and say, okay, it's a stolen car. All right, cars get stolen every day. Carjacking is different than a stolen car. Mm-hmm. And you know what? If somebody's carjacking, you give up the car. You don't need a lot of stuff. It's property. That's why you pay insurance. You'll get your car back. Part 2, okay, a bunch of kids in the car doing stupid, reckless behavior. They're not thinking clearly. So they've gone, just like anger goes to rage, they've got what's called the happy head, and they just want to go. They don't want to face the consequences. Right. So if you don't understand that, you're going to have what happened in L.A. just, I think it's 3 days ago now, where they're chasing that stolen and they all surround it, and the guy's playing bumper car to get out of it with it. Listen, human beings don't want to go to jail, folks. Catch on. Okay, so you're going to have to come up with a better way, and tax strips aren't the better way. So the final thing is the copper felt that he was in danger. So he fired 8 rounds into the car. He didn't fire to kill the car, and he didn't fire to kill the driver. He fired 8 rounds. And to me, that's reckless. And when your behavior is reckless and not caring, and one of the kids got clipped, he's not dead, but he was injured, all that other shit, Brian, you don't have the right to drive without a blinker. You don't have the right to speed on an icy road, because what you're doing is putting me in danger, and that's not fair. And that's what the entire Constitution is about our personal freedoms. Listen, I made the mistake to steal a car, and I made the mistake to have my drunken friends and the teenagers in the car with me. That's not a death sentence, Brian. That's called due process.
Yeah,
and when we're talking about crowd behavior, it's the same thing. It's easy to get wrapped up in a situation like that, you know. So let's not have a lethal outcome, right? In every one of those situations, it's not right. It's not fair.
Yeah, and it kind of goes into the complexity and simplicity of human behavior sometimes, right?
I absolutely agree.
There's a lot of contributing factors in all of these crowd situations. So I'll just use the general term of a crowd situation, whether that's a football game, that's a riot in the streets, that's a church group gathering. Those are all there's a crowd there, so there's a lot of dynamics. So I think being in those moments of understanding the feeling or mood of it, will determine where is this likely headed, right? If you feel that even at the gate waiting for your airport, and like you're going, all right, well, if the gate agent comes on one more time and says we're delayed again, like this is gonna get rough. You know what I mean?
I may need to take the hit and go find another airline or another flight or get a rental car. I agree with you.
There's different situations where they always build. It's never just, well, I was just hanging out and next thing I knew, like, no, that's not how any of these situations occur.
It's because your orientation was different. You didn't have the context. It's not the situation was wrong, it's you were wrong in that situation,
which is why we always bring up the point, you knew or should have known, right? That's about the responsibility. And this is why, I'm not going to get into, well, why aren't we holding people accountable that do this stuff? And that's
another pod.
Well, cities are already seeing the effects of not doing that, and have now realized. I think Minneapolis is back to funding their police department what it was prior to them defunding them, because they realized we just made a catastrophic mistake. And I think us as taxpayers and voters can't ever forget those kind of things. And that's more of a point, but that's a sort of a separate issue. Just more issue, in the moment, is same thing. Like you're at a baseball game with your family and there could be a riot. Like, yes, if you haven't considered that possibility,
a traffic accident,
yes,
a traffic accident in a small town at an intersection with no injuries could turn into looting and burning that city down and having to call the National Guard. Okay. Happens all the time. Okay. Doesn't happen with a great degree of frequency, but the ramping up does. And you remember, Brian, a year ago, we were helping prepare some people that were going to be sent to another location. And so they were all sitting on their couch. We were sitting on our couch and we were zooming back and forth. Hey, pay attention to this. Don't go here. Do this. And Shelley brought up a picture, and it showed a sporting event where people were milling about inside of an arena. And Shelley pointed to a ledge on top of one of the stalls. And she goes, how quickly could you push me up there and then me pull you up there? And we were all going, where's she going with this one?
Yeah.
She goes, because if this crowd goes crazy, that'll be the only safe place in this arena. So to use the Shelley analogy and to use mine about the drain, where could you get compression injuries that were so bad that you would die? Doorways, because doorways are meant for one person going in and one coming out, or two coming in, or a rotary or whatever else. So if you're now in that situation where you're at a theater, or you're at a play, or you're at a person's home, and something happens and you all got to get out that one exit, Brian, people are going to get hurt. So if we think of a situation just merely like that, sticking a hose in a shoebox that's only got one exit, the water is going to continue to fill until it overcomes that situation. So in crowd dynamics, from this perspective, if you're going to go someplace for the holidays, look at the exits, come up with alternative. It's a pace plan. It's an architecture.
Yeah,
where is it going to be most dangerous? Right there. Why? Because the people fleeing and the people that are, standing and trying to film, and then the demonstrators are all going to congeal. Do you see what I'm trying to say? They're going to coalesce in that one spot, and that's going to be the hot spot, the danger. We got to start thinking like that, Brian. It's not getting easier. Students have to start thinking about that. We become our own worst enemy because we fail to anticipate danger and opportunity. Boom. There's one right there.
Yeah.
That goes right along with your correlation on crowds.
No, and that's a kind of good point, because it is again, with everything going on, we now have the holidays, which is a stressful time. And so those shopping malls or wherever you're at, people are stressed right now, more so than other typical holiday seasons. At least last year was still 2020 Christmas was still during COVID, but I think people were kind of a little bit more willing to give each other some room because there was COVID and was still new. And it's, hey, it's the holidays, we want to have a normal one. And people are so over everything right now and so stressed. They're like, F this. And that's how you're in a store and you're talking to the a sales attendant in the clothing area, and you know what, her boyfriend walks in and decides this is the place where he's gonna domestic violence spills over into a shooting or something. I mean,
that memo about love didn't come to me. It came to your girlfriend or your boyfriend.
Yeah.
Okay, so now that same exact situation, and what about that, Brian, now being a shoplifter, and now they're wrestling with the shoplifter, and the shoplifter pulls out a gun or a knife, or in the parking lot, that person wants to flee from the scene. Brian, you're talking about a volatile mix, because when you put a whole bunch of people in a situation, right back to your original point, one-on-one, we can probably resolve it. When those numbers get skewed, it's going to get
how many times have we seen it and walked up and said something to a gate agent at an airline, or some manager at a restaurant, or someone working at a busy, crowded place that's handling the situation really well, because
we do it all the time.
They're communicating effectively. They're talking to folks, calming people down and saying, "Hey, folks, we understand." I mean, those simple things of just relating to people. Hey, don't forget to who's sick of Mariah Carey's, Christmas Carol? You know what I mean? Like, you've heard it 37 times in here. Like, all of those things are just what just releases that pressure valve. I mean, that's what it does.
You're in, Brian, folks just said gems, write them down. You're in a situation, you're going out to your car, you got your family, you bump into a guy says, "Hey, asshole, watch where you're going." And you can turn around and go, "Hey, don't say asshole in front of my family." And now it's on.
Yeah.
Or you can turn around and say, "Hey, I'm sorry. I'll be more mindful," and you can walk out. De-escalation takes two parts. Okay, you can't be the only one de-escalating. And de-escalation at bang is a horrible place to start. You got to be more mindful of that, because sometimes it's what you say or what you don't say that can turn it into something. Even standing there and posturing can turn it into a homicide.
That's why I've given people my spot in line before, because I saw them amping up and pissed off there standing in line. I was like, "Hey, man, you're clearly in a hurry here. Why don't you go ahead and take my spot?" And then they did, and then 30 seconds went by, and they realized how stupid they were acting and apologized to everyone. I mean,
just happened to me Saturday. I'm in line. A guy comes up, and I can see him standing there with the one item. There's only two lines going, and people are going. Brian, I shop at 6 a.m. to avoid crowds.
Yeah, I know.
But this happened to be the one person that had to get in, and there was already somebody like me in the other line. So what happened is I caused a gap, and so the female goes, "Next, please." And I looked at him and I waved him ahead.
Yeah.
And he looks at me and she goes, "Hey, she's waving at you." He was on the wavelength that I'm pissed and I'm holding my single item. So he missed me gesturing him to go forward. I go, "Dude, go ahead." And then he got mad and he waved. And I'm like, "You're getting angry over your one item and I'm trying to help you. And you've gone so internal, you're missing it." So you know what? I had to check out then. Had I gone on and said, "I'm trying to do a good thing," it would have started turning into a fist fight. People are so stupid because you take your own perspective in every outing. And that's a bias. You have to back off the bias sometimes and take a look. And somebody's going, "Listen to me. I'm not taking shit from anybody." It sounds like Shelley, right? You know what I'm saying? And Tommy Boy, you know what I'm saying? We don't take shit from anybody. You know?
Shut the fuck up, you fucking fuck.
Exactly. When she gets angry, right? But the idea is that she never uses that in public. You get what I'm trying to say? In public, she's a master manipulator. And then she has to put that bile, that vitriol somewhere. And so she gets with us and we laugh about it. But in the moment, you can turn a bumping into each other in a shopping cart thing into a homicide. And Brian, at the end of the day, it's not worth it. And you just had another caper that we were talking just a few days ago. Remember the guy that went outside and killed the person because they were speeding.
He thought they sped down the street.
How many times have we seen that in just the last few years? You see what I'm saying? We can count 5 or 6 examples of the same thing happening because people don't understand. If you don't let that pressure vent, it doesn't dissipate. It's like time. Time is all over everywhere. It's like moisture. Moisture, it comes in the rain and then it dehydrates, but it turns into a cloud and turns into something else. Your anger has to go somewhere. And now with crowds, you've got to understand the larger the crowd, the more likely that persons in the crowd could be a catalyst for change. And it could be positive change, yay, a wave, or it could be negative change.
Yeah, it could be danger.
Bad.
Danger or opportunity.
I agree.
And yeah, so yes, we simplify this stuff for a reason, because when when you're trying to put it, the theoretical basis for a lot of this stuff is not that it's bad. It's just, it's not really going to help much. It's a they're all descriptive analytics, and it's great. Like that. Okay, there's some things to consider about people, but none of that's going to help you in the situation. Using your own, ability naturally, innately as a human to read something and go, you know what, maybe we should leave, or maybe we should step in right now, or maybe we should not. That's going to be more important than looking at someone going, oh, you know what? I wonder what his motivations are for this. Is he trying to steal something? It's like, look, what is their intent? What is someone trying to do?
I'm not saying don't get involved. I'm saying that when you get involved, enlist the aid of others.
Have a plan, enlist everyone. Yeah.
My plan is always the same thing. If somebody wants to call me out in a public place, I go, hey folks, I'm becoming really scared because of this guy's aggressive behavior. You know what I'm saying? Hey, bartender, dial 911 and hover your finger over that last one, because I'm becoming very scared. And sir, you're scaring me. Why are you doing this? Okay, now all of a sudden I've got everybody, and now it's changing their plan, and they're going, you dick, because I wanted to just throw a punch and be done with it. Listen, if that person shows up with alcohol on their breath to your Christmas parade, you have a higher likelihood things are going wrong. Yeah. If they're already rumbling and grumbling and being an angry little gnome, you're going to have even greater problems. Those are predictive analytics, Brian, and I'd much rather go with predictive analytics. You get what I'm trying to say? Than a descriptive analytics, because with the predictive analytic, if it fits a behavior and there's 3 or more cues, I'm out of there. I don't care what the event is. I don't care if it's my surprise birthday party. I'm going to be out of there.
Who would throw you a surprise party?
My proctologist.
I don't think did he call it a party? Did he invite more people in the room and call it a party?
The first guy wasn't a proctologist. I think he was the janitor.
He had a lab coat on though.
And he had a broom.
So, and he didn't have anything on under that lab coat.
I should have guessed. I should have known.
Should have known better. And it was in the alley behind the medical center. So
I was on the way. It was near the parking lot. I thought, this guy seems credible.
He seems nice.
I'm sorry.
He had soft hands.
Did we make our point today? I think we did. So. Let's not talk about my
well, yeah. I think we made our point, and then the takeaways obviously being that, like, I always try to strip away any sort of ideology behind it. I try to strip motive and motivation or whatever that is, and look for, is there opportunity here for someone? Is there danger here? What is this person's intent? Because you're getting in all that stuff. I think clouds our judgment really on how to respond. That's why we have different level. People like, well, why did you respond this way to that one and this way to this one? It's, well, I don't know, because
different situations.
And it clouds the way we look at them. So I always try to look at, obviously we always talk about intent on here, but this crowd behavior thing is, you got to remember, and I agree with that idea, is if you see people acting out in a crowd, that's not because they became overwhelmed and the crowd took over and I wasn't thinking straight. No, you got to be who you are. And there are people that do that. So when you see that stuff, and
that's a much more likely reason to call that behavior than merely anonymity or
but a great one is at sporting events, because you'll have someone who may be typically more quiet or reserved and in general, and then you go to their favorite team and they're out there getting super into it and they're yelling. It's like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just they're rooting for their team, but like, that's who they are, man. They really, really are that person
at
for
work,
that team.
At home,
you know what I mean? Like it's you can kind of see that. So it's just another way to look at it, I guess.
I agree.
Focusing on their intent. I don't know, any other, I guess, final comments on here, Greg?
No, you can
shout out to your proctologist.
Yeah, exactly. It's 5 years now, Brian. You can be a spectator without hurting anybody. You could be a demonstrator, a participant without hurting anybody. What I'm saying is your goal, your intent can still be achieved without violence. Violence is one way to achieve your goal.
It's a tool.
I would absolutely encourage you to look at other ways.
Yeah. Okay. Well, kind of covered a lot. So I think we'll end it on there, but I do appreciate everyone for for tuning in and listening. And of course, hit us up with your questions. And then we answer a lot of listener questions on our Patreon site. It's only a few bucks a month. And we put a bunch of our older, like our webinars and stuff on there. So there's a ton of information. You should definitely check it out. Please like and share the episode. Please rate us down there if you can. That would be great. And we would appreciate it. Helps kind of get the word out and increases the listener base. So thank you everyone for tuning in, and don't forget that training changes behavior.